Hey, who's there? Let me just turn this down a little bit. Yeah? That's a bit better. Hey, hi, howdy. Turn that to there. Maybe that's a good volume. Anyone who's there in the chat, let me know. Let me know how this all sounds. We're gonna do a bit of an unusual one. Let me just... Heyo! We're gonna do a bit of an unusual one. What I've got here is an article freshly penned by one Joanne Kathleen Rowling. And I can't do what I'd usually do to just alleviate the poison, just to lance the boil. I cannot do what I'd usually do, which would be to make a Twitter thread and just go through what is intensely terrible about this piece of shit article and explain it. And I can't do that because in J.K. Rowling's replies the other day, after she claimed that people who menstruate is an offensive term, I said that men can menstruate, trans men, and someone else told me I was denying science, and I told them cry harder, TERF, and that got me banned on Twitter. Well, okay, soft banned. I'm limited. I can't tweet. Okay, so for saying cry harder, TERF, I can't tweet. So I just need to get this out. I'm gonna hopefully do this a little bit. Just focusing directly on the article and responding to it bit by bit, and then I will play some GTA, and anyone who's in chat, we can just chat about it, and maybe I'll clip the bit where I'm talking just about the article and put that up somewhere, because Jesus fucking Christ. Okay. So, for those who are missing the context, J.K. Rowling has been for a long time accused of being a TERF or being associated with TERFs. TERF is an acronym, for those who aren't familiar, invented by TERFs, standing for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. Since its inception, TERFs have begun to claim that it's a slur, an anti-woman slur used by men and by woke Gamergate and by trans rights activists, meant to mirror the phrase men's rights activists, to use to silence them. And it doesn't seem to be fucking working, does it? But it's not. It's a word invented by TERFs to describe themselves. Okay. And J.K. Rowling has been accused of being one. And people have pointed to various things for a long time. She's liked some tweets by some TERFs. She's followed a lot of TERF accounts. And then pretty recently, she just had a big old TERF meltdown. Just a big old, just a TERF-a-palooza, if you will. Now, let me make a distinction really, really early on. There are TERFs who are obsessed, creepy bigots. And I won't name any names, but some names might spring to the minds of people who are watching, and that's not my fault. But there are TERFs who are obsessed, creepy bigots who spend all day, every day in like a rage depression on Twitter, just like seeking out 13-year-old trans girls to harass. Just that's all they do. And then there's rubes and dupes. Let's just put this clearly. Over here, okay, professional TERFs, just all day, every day TERFing. They see me TERFing, they sure do hate it. And over here, friends of TERFs, much more nebulous. They've kind of just been duped. It's people who really care about being seen as a feminist, and they have had their movement co-opted by bigots, and they don't understand that. So let's just make that distinction really early on. There are hateful TERFs, transphobes who are, for one thing, funded by Christian conservative groups. I'm not kidding. Christian conservative groups who do gay conversion therapy, deeply homophobic organizations, things that are just, it's inherently just anti-queer. That's the thing. Like, they're just groups that are just trying to oppose any new kind of queerness and try to shoot it down. And so they sort of put as their like front line lesbians, not identifying as queer women, because queer is, you know, as I'm saying, the new frontier of queer is always the enemy. But they create this idea that they are the gay community, and trans is a step. It's beyond the pale. It's a bridge too far. That's the intensive group of TERFs, and then there's just a lot of people who are feminists and care about being feminists, and have been duped into thinking that there is a serious feminism crisis that feminism needs defending from the TRAs. Okay. And I, being a deeply generous person who doesn't deserve to have their account limited on Twitter, would like to say, going in, that I think J.K. Rowling is a little more of the latter. A feminist who cares about feminism and has been duped like a fool and a rube into thinking that there is a feminism crisis that needs solving, where feminism needs defending from the evil transes. Okay. That's the distinction I wanted to make. Sorry for being so long-winded about it. So here's the article. She tweeted this in a no-replies tweet that is now pinned. The tweet says, "TERF Wars. I would play the music right now if it wouldn't get me DMCA'd." Okay? We just gotta go, bum, ba-da-bum, ba-da-ba-ba-ba. Okay. TERF Wars. Episode 1,000,000. This isn't an easy piece to write, for reasons that will shortly become clear, and I know it's time to explain myself on an issue surrounded by toxicity. I just realized I should probably have the article on screen. Give me 2 minutes. I just realized we should have the article on screen so that you guys can read along, so we can have a cool, fun, interactive experience. Whoa! So we can all have a great time. Yeah. Call the number now to contribute your reasons for hating TERFs. Right, let's just... Okay. So... Babada-boop. Read a long time. Oh my god, it's dinner. Got some burgers here. Right. Okay. And let's go get a browser source. Is that what I'm looking for? No, I want a window capture, don't I? And I'm gonna get... Oh, hello. Okay. And... Okay, let's see if we can sort this out. Oh, cripes. Move myself over a little bit. Drag this onto here. And here we go. Okay, friendos, please tell me if I need to do anything to rearrange that situation. Okay. Is that on screen? Is that all on screen? I think so. I think so. Okay. Okay. Let's go. So I can just do this on this screen. I could just read it. I'll be reading it as you're reading it. It's a magical time. Everyone's having a great time together. Wonderful. Let's do that. I'm just gonna put the laptop down. Okay. Hello. This isn't an easy piece for me to write for reasons that will shortly become clear, but I know that it's time to explain myself on an issue surrounded by toxicity. Let me just jump right in there, right from the beginning. This is an issue where there are bigots, and there is a minoritized group. It is not about both sides yelling at each other. It's about one side being bigots who say trans women shouldn't go in women's bathrooms because if that's allowed, then any scary, hairy, schlong-hanging man can just go in women's bathrooms. And the other side saying trans women, you can count on one hand the number of times trans women have assaulted anyone, anywhere, and trans women are infinitely more likely to get assaulted in a women's bathroom than to assault anyone, and shut up TERF, and also fuck you. And that's the toxicity, is one side lying, and the other side being like, hey, stop lying, also fuck you. Right. I write this without any desire to add to that toxicity. For people who don't know, last December I tweeted my support for Maya Forstater, a tax specialist who'd lost her job for what were deemed transphobic tweets. Now, she didn't lose her job for transphobic tweets. She lost her job for being at the head of a campaign of transphobic harassment. I believe she had trans colleagues. She lost her job for being... Now, this is important. I'm just resizing the window. Sorry about this, everyone. Try and make it a little more... Oh, cripes. Try and make it a little more workable for everybody watching. Okay. Transition. Okay. She didn't lose her job for tweets. That's a fucking myth. That's a lie you hear from anyone who ever gets cancelled. This will become relevant later. Because they really want you to believe that it's just tweets. Someone just did a little bit of an edgy tweet, and it's gotten them cancelled. This doesn't happen. That has been a tactic of alt-right organizers such as Mike Cernovich, who dug up old tweets where Sam Cedar, for example, made what was clearly a sarcastic joke, if a little edgy, and then used it as an AstroTurfed campaign to get him fired. That kind of thing has happened, but but when the people doing the cancelling are a minoritized group, it's not really. It's not about just some tweets, is it? That's a lie, isn't it, Joanne? Actually, Maya Forstater was going back to that distinction from before, one of these professional TERFs, just like all day, every day TERFing, not one of these just like nebulous feminists, just like living her life. She was going for it with the TERFing. Okay? That's a lie. Now let's carry on.
She also literally didn't get fired. Her contract wasn't renewed.
Okay. Perfect. She took her case to an employment tribunal asking the judge to rule on whether a philosophical belief that sex is determined by biology is protected in law. Judge Taylor ruled that it wasn't. Again, we're just like... We're just presenting one side of the facts, and that side is that when you only present that side, it adds up to just lying, really, because she wasn't just presenting one side of the. She wasn't just having a case about an abstract, right? It wasn't that. That's the way that TERFs were spinning it, and again, distinction. We're just trying to put JK over in this group of people who've been fooled by TERFs, trying to be generous here. The TERFs have said that that's what the case was about. It's about whether sex is determined by biology, or whether you just get to pretend you're whatever you want. Just ignore science. And that's obviously not what the case was about. The case was about her being a transphobic fucking bully, and her employer not wanting to create a hostile environment because of her bigotry anymore. That's what it was fucking about, Joanne. Okay. So Judge Taylor didn't rule that a philosophical belief in sex is determined by biology isn't protected by law. That's not what Judge Taylor ruled. Judge Taylor ruled that being a bigoted transphobic bully isn't protected by law. Also, you know, as Natalie pointed out, she wasn't fired. Her contract just wasn't renewed. So I'm not even sure that had the judge been wholly on the TERF team, that legally speaking, you could win a wrongful termination suit based on not being renewed. My interest in trans issues predated Maya's case by almost 2 years, during which I followed the debate around the concept of gender identity closely. I've met trans people... Now, again, I just want to nip back to this distinction between the people who are dedicated bigots, transphobes, TERFs, who spend all their time being TERFs. Again, I'm not naming any names. It's up to you who you might be thinking of. And people who've been duped by that, who care about feminism. Okay? And I think it's unfortunate that J.K. Rowling really wants to use her, she wants to show off how much she cares, because actually, the more she says she's spent time thinking about this, the less she can be over in this group. And I really want to be generous here. The less she can be over in this group of just being fucking duped by liars, and the more she's over in this group of the weirdo obsessed bigots. It's unfortunate because she does want to qualify how much she's an expert on the topic when she is not. I've met trans people and read sundry books, blogs, and articles by trans people, gender specialists, intersex people, psychologists, safeguarding experts, social workers, and doctors, and follow the discourse online and in traditional media. Well, that's really funny because so have I. So have a fucking lot of trans people. And nobody I know is trying to erase biological sex. She must just be reading different books. She must just be reading different books to me. On one level, my interest in this issue has been professional because I'm writing a crime series set in the present day, and my fictional female detective is of an age to be interested in and affected by these issues herself, but on another, it's intensely personal, as I'm about to explain. Let me just take a moment on that one.
That makes me fucking mad.
What age do cis women reach? Now, I've heard before of okay, we all know about a time in your life when some people, I mean J.K. Rowling included, would maybe start to call a girl a woman. Because apparently the term people who menstruate isn't right, so you shouldn't call girls anymore as soon as they menstruate. Only women is allowed. There's a time in your life when some people politely call the change. And somewhere also along the timeline for cis women, there's of an age to spend upwards of 100 hours a week on Twitter, following Women First Scotland, the LGB Alliance, liking Maya Forstatter's tweets, saying Magdalene Burns did nothing wrong. I don't know what that point is. It's an age, is what I'm saying. The biological determinism has gone to another level, where in fact, actually, there's just a special age that you reach, and you're just I guess it's your biological alarm clock, actually. It just fucking rings off the hook. And it's TERF time, baby! It's fucking TERF time! It's time to fucking go! Okay, I'm just teasing around here. all the time I've been researching and learning, accusations and threats from trans activists have been bubbling in my Twitter timeline. I am not going to question this one. I'm going to take it at 100% face value that she has received violent, awful threats. I'm just not gonna, because, hey, I have received violent, awful threats from people who are leftists, are trans, are people of color, or whatever, who I won't play the game of pretending that, like, our sports team can do no wrong. I'm just gonna leave that one at that. If she says she's received threats and harassment, okay, we all know that some of what she's calling harassment is people saying, "This ain't it, chief." But if she says she's received more serious threats and harassment, I'm just going to leave that one at that. This was initially triggered by a like. When I started taking an interest in gender identity and transgender matters, I began screenshotting comments that interested me as a way of reminding myself what I might want to research later. On one occasion, I absent-mindedly liked instead of screenshotting. That single like was deemed evidence of wrongthink, and a persistent low level of harassment began. So, okay. Just to update where we're at in the story, J.K. Rowling's character in her book has reached that special age, ladies, you know what I mean, when you become a TERF, and she, the character, cares a lot about these issues. And so J.K. Rowling was doing a lot of research, and she liked to screenshot stuff for research, and one day, instead of doing a screenshot, she clicked on, oh no, what have you done? Accidentally, whoopsie. And this is her senior moment that she described, as she described it before. No, that's all fucking lies. Fuck you, Joanne. Actually, that's all fucking cowardly lies. Shut the fuck up. Okay, we're going back to being really generous. That doesn't make a whole heap of sense with what is coming up in the rest of the article, like beliefs that she herself espouses in the rest of the article. The defense she is making logically at this point is that she was writing a character who believes that stuff. And the reason you would make that defense is to say, I don't believe that stuff. Later in the article, she basically shows that she does, so there's really no point in this part. This is really just some fluff. I don't know. Like, I don't really think there's much point in this part. Months later, I compounded my accidental like crime by following Magdalene Burns on Twitter. Let me just, again, I know I'm pausing a lot going through this, but she said here like crime, and there she said wrongthink. What can I say? That's just weak sauce, Joanne. That's just weak. That's just bad. How do you, as a feminist, JK, Ms. Rowling, feel when someone who disagrees with you says that you asking them to reconsider their position is thought police, is wrongthink, is newspeak? How do you feel about that? You know what this is? If you're a feminist, you know what this is? Reactionary fucking bullshit. I'm sorry, but like, you know what this is as a thing to say, as a way to behave, as a fucking thing to, like a word to chuck in when you're being harassed by the trans Twitter mob or any Twitter mob of woke scolding, blah, blah, blah. Like, when you say wrongthink, you're just saying it's all political correctness, it's all blah, 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 blah. Come on. If you're a feminist, you know this. If you're a feminist, you've been on the other side of this and been accused of being the one enforcing the Orwellian newspeak. I mean, I remember this. I mean, American audience, right? Like, you know, you don't have the exact same touchstones as us, but like, we very much had a bunch of the same fucking circle jerk with people being asked to say police officers, not policemen, when the correct gender-neutral term is fucking pigs. But like, any gender-neutral term, which like, and that wasn't, and to be clear, I'm not talking about in the year of our Lord current year, when we're including fabulous NBs. I'm talking about when feminists wanted people to acknowledge that women do the same jobs as men. We had this fucking shit. Okay, we had this. People saying that it's newspeak, that it's thought policing, that it's, you know, you're being cancelled for a crime if you say the milkman. I don't know. We still say milkman. But that's because he comes and fucks your wife. I don't know. Like, I think that's why that one's remained intensely gendered. But now he can be a trans man. That's progress. So. Okay. Like crime, wrong think, blah blah blah, Magdalene Burns. Magdalene was an immensely brave young feminist, citation needed, who was dying of an aggressive brain tumor. I followed her because I wanted to contact her directly, which I succeeded in doing. Weird sentence, but fine. However, as Magdalene was a great believer in the importance of biological sex and didn't believe lesbians should be called bigots for not dating trans women with penises. Watch a single Riley J. Dennis video, is what I can say at this point, JK. Like, it's not being called a bigot for not wanting to date a person with a penis. It's being called a bigot because you're saying, I, as a lesbian, don't date men. Men have penises. And when I see a man, I immediately think of his penis. That's being a bit like, that is okay? It's not just being a bigot, it's also being quite creepy. Okay, because there is a big TERF preoccupation with people's genitals. But like, people aren't being called bigots for not wanting to date people with penises. Genital preferences aren't themselves inherently transphobic. There's another conversation you can have, okay, about when my gals, okay, my fabulous queens are serving just realness, and there is no way that someone looks at them and is thinking about their genitals being right, and finds a trans woman attractive, and that actually attraction is not just based on genitals. But even at the end point of that conversation is still that if someone was attracted to someone and then found out they had genitals, that they didn't feel comfortable dating someone who had those genitals, that would just be kind of fine. It would be sad for both parties, I imagine. If they're attracted to one another and they can no longer pursue a relationship, that would be sad. But that's the only end point. It doesn't end with the other person then being like, oh, you're a bigot. Like, no, that's not real. That's just not real. That's just not real. So that's the way she's presenting the facts, and then the way that the real world works. It's funny. It's funny she didn't say she when she recently had her TERF meltdown, she didn't say she got called from these illusory trans people that she loves and cares about and is friends with. She got called from a self-identified butch lesbian. That was her tweet. It's like, okay, I mean, the TERFs are always putting lesbians at the forefront of their fake feminism psyop. It's not really news, honestly. JKR, you know. Let's carry on with it. But I just wanted to say, so that's the way that TERFs will always present this debate, being called a bigot for not wanting to date someone with a penis. And it's not that. It's just not. It's being called a bigot for calling women men. Okay. Because you know that's transphobic. It's just basic shit. It's just basic shit. So, and again, I just want to revisit, because I know we've gotten a lot of viewers since I've started now. I am making a distinction between professional TERFs. Okay, if you've seen the recent Philosophy Tube video, you may be a bit more familiar with this. Professional bigots, obsessed bigots, creepy TERFs, people who spend all day, every day harassing trans people. I know some trans people, IRL, Joanne, that stands for in real life, who have been harassed by such people, and I'm not going to name names, but again, I think everyone has kind of a sense of who they are, and they are obsessed and terrible and frankly fascistic, and a lot of their groups are funded by Christian conservative groups from America that do things like gay conversion therapy because it's inherently just an anti-queer movement. And that's the one side of the distinction, and then there are people who've just been fooled by them into thinking that this is feminism when it's not. Because these people are liars. As well as being creeps, obsessives, bigots, they are liars. And then there are people who are being lied to. I just want to reiterate that distinction, because going through this article, I think we can be more generous by assuming that J.K. Rowling is regurgitating lies she's heard, if we want to be generous, rather than sneakily disguising her own bigotry, which is a little easy to believe that is what she's doing here, but I'm trying to be really generous with this. I'm sincerely. Okay. I'm sorry, it's been ages since I carried on with the article. Scott and Transparency, I'm going to mod you both. Not ban, mod. Sorry, the buttons are right next to each other. Just in case, because we've got a lot more people than we usually do. Just in case there's any troublemakers. Looking at you guys, you troublemakers, you little scamps. I'm watching you. All right. Okay, here we go. Dots were joined in the heads of Twitter trans activists, and the level of social media abuse increased. I'm not going to question whether she received abuse, harassment, threats. I'm just going to point out that some of it, at least, some non-zero amount, was people saying, "Shut up, TERF. Stop lying," and that's. Alright. I mention all this only to explain that I knew perfectly well what was going to happen when I supported Maya. I must have been on my 4th or 5th cancellation by then. I expected the threats of violence, to be told I was literally killing trans people with my hate, to be called cunt and bitch, and of course for my books to be burned. Okay, so this is something I take serious umbrage with. Hey, pun not intended. Because any reference to book burning, when you're trying to construct this narrative that you are the oppressed one, and the other people, they're doing the Orwellian dystopian oppressing, is a reference to the Nazi Party, who, if anyone isn't aware, burnt a lot of books containing ideas that they were opposed to. Chief among them, leftist ideas, ideas of modern art, things deemed to be part of the international Jewish conspiracy, and as a very, very, very early large book burning, a raid on the Magnus Hirschfeld Institute for Research into Gender and Sexuality, where in the 1930s, Magnus Hirschfeld was decades ahead of where we're at now, of the trend, okay, maybe like up to where we're at now, with self-ID, with talking about trans people and researching them and supporting them. And the Nazis came in, raided the place, arrested for later, murder, okay, everyone, and burned all the research, setting the world back by decades. And I take serious issue, and I'm trying to stay calm about this, but I take serious issue with a comparison that frames trans people on the side doing the book burning okay? Okay. I just take serious issue with that. Even if people literally burned her books because of her being a TERF. Even if it literally happened, I take serious issue with her mentioning of it, actually. But I kind of have some doubts. Joe, it's not a skirt. It's actually just some fantastic trousers. It's just some really, really good trousers. But thank you anyway. I like them too. Sorry. That was another long diversion, but I take some serious issue with that. Okay. Although one particularly abusive man told me he'd composted them. I don't have the hours in the day to research this. I mention all this only to explain that I knew perfectly well what was going to happen when I supported Maya. I must have been on my I went back up a paragraph there. Sorry about that. What I didn't expect in the aftermath of my cancellation was the avalanche of emails and letters that came showering down upon me, the overwhelming majority of which were positive. Okay, this is going to be another long diversion. I'm sorry about this, but for those who don't understand how fascists and cults work, hug boxing is a crucial technique used by people who want to create a community that is insanely insular and cuts people off from any kind of influence that would deny the lies that the community is trying to reinforce. Hug boxing is a practice where people do the kind of opposite of a Twitter dogpile. You know how if you've ever been in the middle of a tweet storm, okay, it's just everyone doing their own little bit, and everyone thinks they're just doing their own little dunk, but it's the fact that there are hundreds of them, and so because you've heard it over and over and over and over and over again, it's intense and it's awful and it makes you feel terrible. And no one person is, solely to blame, and there are people doing more and doing less, but it's awful because of the mass of it. And then hug boxing is the exact reverse, where rather than to eject someone from their community, these people are piling on with love and love bombing. I'm so sorry, I got the wrong term. Love bombing is the term. Thank you so much. Love bombing, is when people are piling on to give their positivity so that someone feels, a safe place where people will be supportive of me. Or, in J.K. Rowling's case here, think, I am standing up for the people. The real feminists who really get it and care, they appreciate what I am doing right now. And that is where, again, that is why I would like to be generous and say she is on this side over here, the people who have been duped and lied to by TERFs into thinking they're fighting for feminism. And not over here, which is the less generous side. Okay. It was love bombing. I'm sorry about that. I always get those two confused. Okay. Positive, grateful, and supportive. They came from a cross-section of kind, empathetic, and intelligent people, citation needed, some of them working in fields dealing with gender dysphoria and trans people, I fucking hope not, who are all deeply concerned about the way a socio-political concept is influencing politics, medical practice, and safeguarding. They're worried about the dangers to young people, gay people, and about the erosion of women erosion of women's and girls' rights. Above all, they're worried about a climate of fear that serves nobody, least of all trans youth. Well, so for another terminology that's crucial to the TERF discussion, concern trolling is a really, really, really common practice among fascist groups, for one thing, but also among TERFs, and isn't that weird? Whereby you talk about how you're just really concerned about the affected group. You are on the side where you're concerned. You are worried about people getting hurt by this stuff, and that's part of the crucial lie that gets the more nebulous, less invested group kind of won over. And so here's the thing. Stefan Molyneux, and for anyone who doesn't know who that is, I am not exaggerating. Stefan, you can try and sue me, but I'm going to just use descriptive words. Stefan Molyneux, neo-Nazi cult leader, goes on all the time onto chat shows, the Rubin Report, or he has a Jordan Peterson in interview, and he says, I was heartbroken to discover there are IQ average differences between racial groups. I was heartbroken by this because it means that we are letting people down by pretending that black people are as smart as white people, because we're just making them compete on a playing field that's inherently uneven. And he says this publicly, and the stuff that he's saying privately, and when I say privately, I just mean on his own channel or in spaces where you're more likely to have already been indoctrinated in. The stuff he says there is race war now, we want a white ethno-state, ethno-states are the only endpoint, the only solution, all of this, because he is just actually a neo-Nazi. And that's exactly how concern trolling works. Like, I care about the thing, that's why I'm in this conversation. Now let's discuss it, and let's clearly just pretending it's equal and pretending it's the way they say it is actually doing more harm than good. But just to run through it, common concern trolling includes trans youths will get irreparable damage to their bodies if they turn out to not in fact be trans and want to detransition later in life. Firstly, not that this is an answer in and of itself, but first point, detransition is incredibly uncommon. But secondly, and this is much more real, the waiting times and the process of transition is just incredibly slow. There's just an enormous amount of time to reconsider things. And thirdly, much to the chagrin of every fucking trans person I know, most of HRT is entirely reversible. Like, you just stop taking the girl pills for a minute, and suddenly all the things are doing the thing you don't want. Okay, so if we're talking, unless we're talking about surgery, which is not available to people, okay, and requires an enormous amount of checking and double checking and second opinions and all of this, and living as living in your preferred gender publicly for an amount of time and informed consent and all of this, unless we're talking about surgery, there isn't this irreversible damage to young people who might not actually be trans. Even puberty blockers only delay puberty in the cases of people who would want to, if this hypothetical person, well, no, okay, let's say fringe case, not hypothetical, fringe case, this person realizes they're not trans later on and they go off HRT, their puberty will just happen naturally anyway after that. So it's concern trolling. That's the crucial term. I'd stepped back from Twitter for many months, both before and after tweeting support for Maya, because I knew it was doing nothing for my good for my mental health. I only returned because I wanted to share a free children's book during the pandemic. This is, in debate terms, what you might call poisoning the well, where you need to frame things before you get to the point. The only reason I was back on Twitter was so that I could save kittens from a burning building. And while I was there, I made 1 or 2 offhand comments about Hitler having done nothing wrong. And suddenly, okay, it's fucking ridiculous. Okay, it just doesn't. Okay, okay. I'm not gonna go into a long one about that one, but it's just like immediately, activists who clearly believe themselves to be good, kind, and progressive people. It's really funny how the projection works, so that there are these TERFs, these obsessed TERFs, lying to feminists, to a bunch of people who care about being feminists and making them work for their bigotry, and then they pretend the way they've constructed a picture of the world. It's actually that way around for trans people, right? There's actually people who think they're helping trans people, but are just being led along to do harassment or whatever the fuck. Swarmed back into my timeline, assuming a right to police my speech, accuse me of hatred, call me misogynistic slurs, and above all, as every woman involved in this debate will know, TERF. Here we go. If you don't already know, and why should you, TERF is an acronym coined by trans activists. Now, sorry, I'll say one thing. And why should you is an interesting thing here, because the way cis privilege or any majority group's privilege works is that you don't have to know about the people who are working to destroy a minoritized group. You just don't have to know. You just don't need to worry about it. I've got a friend who lives not far from where I live who's been followed by TERFs. Like, in the real world, in the street he lives in. Okay? And why should you know, cis people? Why should you know what a TERF is? This is just ridiculous transgender ideology terms. Fucking guess again. She says TERF is an acronym coined by trans activists. I say, citation fucking needed. TERF is an acronym coined by TERFs that they later decided was an evil slur, because when people started describing what their ideology was, they hated it. When people started describing what it was they were saying, and summing that all up with the word TERF, suddenly TERF becomes an evil misogynistic slur used to silence women. Being trans is not an ideology. Being a TERF is a fucking ideology. Being trans doesn't make you go and harass people or assault people or follow them down the street. But I mean this from the experiences of friends I know in real fucking life, Joanne. Being a TERF does make people do all those fucking things. I'm trying to stay calm about this one, but honestly, it's getting a little bit under my skin. Okay. And I just want to revisit that thing as well. And why should you know? Because, like I say, as the presumed reader who is cis, okay, or let's say you're the character from the Cormorant Strike novels, who's reached that time in her life where being a TERF is suddenly the only biological option, why should you know? There's no reason for you to know. Every trans person I know knows about TERFs. Every trans person I know has to live in fear of being harassed by one specific man, one specific famous British man, because that's how obsessive and creepy TERFs are, that I know 2 people who have been personally harassed by the same creepy, famous TERF, that it feels like an inevitability that you will be harassed by TERFs. Every trans person I know knows that if you go on Twitter and you argue with TERFs, you can get your account mass reported and limited or suspended or permanently banned. My account is in limited mode right fucking now because I was in the replies to J.K. Rowling and I told someone that trans men menstruate and they said I was denying science and I said, cry harder, TERF, and they mass flagged my tweet. Okay? Every trans person has to know about this creepy, obsessive cult of bigots. But you, dear cis reader, why should you? Why should you? Why should you know? Come on. You can't be expected to keep up with all these Twitter arguments that just happen on Twitter, where people get fired for just having tweets and opinions. It's not like we're doing anything in the real world. It's not like we're following people down the fucking street and harassing them. It's just Twitter. Why should you know? Okay. Trans exclusionary radical feminist. In practice, and a huge and diverse cross-section of women are currently being called TERFs, and the vast majority have never been radical feminists. That is the first fair point in this entire goddamn article. A whole bunch of people do get called TERFs when they are just transphobes. Examples of so-called TERFs range from the mother of a gay child who was afraid their child wanted to transition to escape homophobic bullying. I don't have the hours in the day. I don't have the fucking hours in the day, Joanne. Okay? I don't have the fucking hours in the day. I've got gamer goobers fucking harassing me. Okay? I've got little shithead teens harassing me IRL, yelling slurs at me in the street. I've got fucking a family drama, okay? I've got a job to get on with. I don't have the fucking hours in the day to be looking into whatever fucking lies you want to throw in at this point. But, like, okay, whatever, fine. My mother was just concerned about how... To a hitherto totally unfeminist older lady who's vowed never to visit Marks and Spencer again because they're allowing any man who says they identify as a woman into the women's changing groups. My question to cis women is, how often do you leave your woman card at home? Because I imagine that's like a really stressful situation where you like just forget your like woman ID, you know, the one they give you when you're born, the government issued woman ID, and you just are busting for a massive piss, and you're going to but then the bouncer is there. We all know the bouncer. He's that big guy who keeps women safe. Big, wide, muscly guy. And he protects the women. And he's called Graham Linehan. And you want to piss so bad. But you just left the card at home. Oh, fuck me, I fucking forgot. Everyone goes into women's spaces or gendered spaces in general based on self-identification. Oh, shit! Oh, fucking shit me blind! I fucking forgot! Everyone goes into gendered spaces based on self-identification. And big, scary, hairy men who just identify as a woman aren't just being let in. Again, I'm coming at this from a place of knowing trans people. So, you know, equal footing to J.K. Rowling, really. She knows some trans people. I know some trans people. She's read some books and listened to some experts. I've read some books and listened to some experts. Sorry, sundry books and many experts. So really, we're on an just an even playing field here. But the trans people I know have gone through an incredible amount of worry and fear in a place in early transition. Let's say they're comfortable doing some fucking excellent makeup looks. They got some great outfits. They've maybe pierced their ears. But they don't... They couldn't... Maybe they've got thinning hair. For whatever reason, they know they couldn't go into the women's bathroom. But if they went into the men's bathroom, that's also an aggressively gendered space where they're likely to get harassed. All trans people I know have gone through this intense amount of worry and this framing that pretends it's just like an easy thing where like anyone is just like Weil is just like a 7-foot blokey bloke, muscle-bound, brick shithouse beardy man is just sidling up to the woman's bathroom, tossing a nod to Graham the bouncer and going, "Alright, mate, I'm a fucking chick, innit?" And then just being let in, hassle-free. What's that? The fuck is that? Do you guys think that like a sign that is the vague shape of a person wearing a dress would keep a predator out of a room? Like a person who intends to do harm to people, whose intent is to go into spaces and harass, abuse, assault, or whatever, isn't like, they're not going to the effort of like transitioning enough to be like let in without question. This isn't real. This just isn't fucking real, is the thing. Like, it's just not fucking real. Alright. But I really do feel horrible for that woman who will never go in Marks and Spencer's again. She'll never get to go in Marks and Spencer's again. Ironically, radical feminists aren't even trans exclusionary. They include trans men in their feminism because they were born women. Wow. I'm going to move on cleanly from that one. I don't think it even deserves the time of day. Let's go to the next paragraph. But accusations of TERFery have been sufficient to intimidate many people, institutions, and organizations. I fucking wish I once admired, who were cowering before the tactics of the playground. Having gender-neutral spaces, accessible spaces for people, is not giving in to intimidation, is the thing. And I won't waste everyone's time by doing all the arguments, but I think we all can get pretty quickly to a comparison between these arguments here and arguments that, say, the suffragettes would have made about women being allowed to be out in public life, and the arguments they would have been opposed, with. And all minoritized groups have had to make, just arguments that all minoritized groups make in some fashion or another to do with being included in society, and the arguments that they get in response that basically boiled down to, but how will the manager cope? And will I be allowed to speak to him if you break the rules? They'll call us transphobic. They'll say I hate trans people. What next? They'll say you've got fleas? Speaking as a biological woman... Woo! We got there! We fucking got there! We fucking got there! Woman is a gender term. It's, biologically, there's no such fucking thing. Anyway. Time to read the rest of this article as a biological gamer. Let's fucking go. Speaking as a biological woman, a lot of people in positions of power really need to grow a pair, which is doubtless literally possible according to the kind of people who argue that clownfish prove humans aren't a dimorphic species. Endocrinology experts that I have read sundry books from, no, that's not true, I just know them, will tell you that the human species in biological sexual terms is a bimodal distribution. Right? Picture a very exaggerated ass. Okay? A bimodal distribution. Sexually, biologically, there are not the males of the species and the females of the species. Okay? It's not valid to describe people that way. Because if you're talking about chromosomes, all sorts of people have all sorts of fucking chromosomes. I'm very, very serious about this. There are men with XXY, with XX. There are women with XYY. There are women with all the same, with XY as well. Okay, if you're talking about genitals, okay, if you only talk about genitals, there's obviously sex reassignment surgery. Okay, which it fucking means that you could just like it. But even besides that, there are intersex people who are born with both sets of genitals, or some kind of, in some cases, a kind of combination. If we're talking about hormone levels, many postmenopausal women have to take HRT to keep them healthy and to regulate their body to be the way they want it to be, because their estrogen and progestogens levels plummet postmenopausally. And across all of these factors, what you end up with is that the majority of people combine factors into what you would roughly call female, or combine all their factors into what you'd roughly call male. But there are going to be then some people who have XY chromosomes, identify as men, have a penis, and very low testosterone. H-bomber guy for okay, and then there are going to be people who have, let's run through all the factors, right? Who have who were born with both sets of genitals and had a corrective or didn't have a corrective surgery or whatever, but they were born with both sets of genitals, and they have high testosterone, XY chromosomes, they identify as a man, right? It's in the case of each factor, you could have all of them, you could have some of them, you could have none of them, whatever. Okay? That's the thing. And so just the biological sex argument, we've got this bimodal distribution where people are usually quite close to the one or the other, but it's not this strict binary. That just doesn't exist, even biologically. That doesn't mean, in case we're going to get there, that I'm trying to erase biological sex. I'm just trying to present what the actual facts are scientifically. That's all. Okay. I will also say, you aren't attracted to chromosomes. if we just cross-apply this feminist theory for a second, and we think about Magdalene Burns, okay? You don't meet someone in the club, be like, damn, I bet he's XY. Fucking hell. Fuck yeah. You don't. That's nothing. It's nothing. Okay. Dimorphic? Sure. But it's just not a binary. So why am I doing this? Why speak up? Why not quietly do my research and keep my head down? I've got 5 reasons for being worried about the new trans activism and deciding I need to speak up. Firstly, I have a charitable trust that focuses on alleviating social deprivation in Scotland. The co-founder of which, Baroness Nicholson, regularly harasses trans women on Twitter, calling them paedophiles. She has even called a 13-year-old girl a paedophile.
She was also saying that marriage is between a man and a woman on Twitter today.
There you go. Hope you all heard that. So that's J.K. Rowling's charitable trust. With a particular emphasis on women and children. Among other things, my trust supports, and again, that is to do with J.K. Rowling clearly knowing horrible... Oh, I'm on the wrong side. Clearly knowing horrible pieces of shit bigots. Not necessarily being one. What's in her soul? That's none of my business. It's not guilt by association. It's just a simple statement of who she has worked with. Right. Among other things, my trust supports projects for female prisoners and for survivors of domestic and sexual abuse. I also fund medical research into MS, a disease that behaves very differently in men and women. It's been clear to me for a while that the new trans activism is having, or is likely to have, if all its demands are met. We are all familiar, 76 people watching. Read the Trans Manifesto, right? We had it published in the New York Times after we threatened to, we threatened everyone with force femming. You remember this? We had our manifesto published with the Zodiac Killer symbol at the bottom to make sure all our demands would be met. Wait, no, that wasn't. I was thinking of something else. Sorry. I was thinking of something else. A significant impact on many of the causes I support because it's pushing to erode the legal definition of sex and replace it with gender. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. I would like people to not be in prison at all. But I'm just one tran. I'm just speaking as one. I am not pushing to let creepy predator men identify their way into female prisons. It's just kind of fucking nonsense, isn't it? What's this thing we had the other day? There was a Twitter little spat the other day that was also about people, was couched in much more hypothetical terms, but it turned out to be about Maya Forstater. What if someone is fired for just having a bigoted opinion? And look, there's lots you can say about that. But like, what it comes down to, there's lots you can say about that. You can say, well, I don't really care very much. You can say they, as a bigot, can change their opinions, whereas marginalized people can't change their identity. There's lots you can say, but if you take it totally on its own terms, this argument about like if people are fired for bigotry, then they'll be unable to feed their families and they'll get blacklisted and no one will have them anywhere and they'll live in fear and blah, 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 blah. And even taking it on those terms, all you can end up saying, the only place the conversation can really, really end is, that doesn't fucking happen, shut the fuck up. What really fucking happens is marginalized people experience hostile work environments all the fucking time and have no one to complain to. And when they do complain to their managers, have their managers tell them, I think you might not be able to handle the stress of working here. Maybe you should take some time off. And then sneakily look for their replacement the next day. What really fucking happens is this shit. And similarly, if we're talking about eroding the legal definition of sex and replace it with gender, and we're applying this to female prisoners, and so what we're talking about is the idea of this person just like identifying their way into a place where they can be a predator and predate on people. Be fucking real with me. What really fucking happens? What really fucking happens is trans women are put in men's prisons all the fucking time. And they die. Okay? That is the only place, taking your conversation on its totally face value. I am trying to stay calm here, but this is really getting under my skin. That is the only place we can take this fucking conversation, because that is what happens. And I don't even care if it's happened a time, 5 times the other way, because what fucking happens all the fucking time is this way round, where the genuine fucking danger is to trans people, and that's what the pushes to change the law are. Alright. As for domestic abuse, the stats on this are a Google away. Shall we Google? Should we do a little cheeky Google about how domestic abuse affects trans people? Or let's say how homelessness affects trans people? Or employment discrimination? Because the vast majority of trans people are living in poverty, and every trans person I know is. Now, admittedly, I'm young, so there's also that bias. But I also know some cis people who are my age who own houses, even. So... And I don't know any trans people who do. I don't know any trans people with, like... Right? Only online. I know of, essentially, some trans people who are doing really well for themselves, and they're much older than me. And they've been able to find work online. Or they had a settled career before they transitioned. They were already well off. But domestic abuse, come on. You think there isn't like, Joanne, do you think there isn't a noble fucking cause in trans people and domestic abuse? Okay. Would replacing the legal definition of sex and gender do something for domestic abuse? Would the judge be able to convict one person who's been abusing another person? I don't know. I don't fucking think so. Would we be unable to provide safe spaces for people who've been abused? Come on. Just come the fuck on. I know people, plural, who aren't cis women, who've been abused by intimate partner violence, by emotional abuse, by various forms of domestic abuse, and their presence wouldn't be threatening to people. And if it fucking would, what we should work on is creating a space where they can have a space, like, where they can access all the resources they need, not on focusing on drawing a line and keeping them out, which is what you're focusing on here. Alright. I'm gonna get a cup of water. My mouth's a little bit dry from reading this. I'm just gonna be 2 minutes. I'm gonna put this on the waiting screen. Okay, fine. Let's carry on with the article. All right. But before we do, just a couple of things. Firstly, we are trying here to be really generous. There are TERFs who are obsessed, creepy bigots who spend all their time harassing trans people on Twitter. Some names may come to mind. And there are people who care about feminism who have been lied to. And for the purposes of this, I am wholly intending to assume J.K. Rowling is someone who cares about feminism, who has been duped and lied to by TERFs in the interests of generosity and fairness. Because what's in her soul is between her and God. Okay? Okay. And the other point I wanted to make before we start again, is that I would have even more people watching if I could share this stream to Twitter. I cannot. I cannot share this stream to Twitter because in J.K. Rowling's replies, I told the TERF, cry harder TERF, and I got my account restricted and I can't tweet for the week. Funny that, how Twitter, as it exists in the real world already today, right now, is already favouring TERFs and treating TERF as a slur that is like a bannable offence. Don't know, just funny. Just a kind of funny note, really. Came here because Jack Saint shared it. That's because he's a fucking lad. That's what that is. On that note, I have a premiere about a video about being trans and non-binary coming out on Friday, 9 p.m. BST. And I can't tweet about it because I've been fucking silenced by the evil gay agenda. Or the... No, what is it? What is it? No. Muslim Sharia law? No, that's not the one. The transgender ideology? No. Something. One of those things silenced me. You know those things that are always silencing people? One of those silenced me anyway. I have a premiere on my channel, 9 p.m. BST on Friday, about being trans and non-binary. And I'd love you all to be there and watch. There we go. Let's carry on with the article. The second reason is that I'm an ex-teacher and the founder of a children's charity, which gives me an interest in both education and safeguarding. I will go again. The co-founder of her charity, Baroness Nicholson, has been tweeting at trans people, including trans children, calling them pedophiles. If J.K. Rowling cares about safeguarding... then I'm the fucking queen. No, okay. If J.K. Rowling cares about the cobbler's children go unshod, that's the one. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. Like many others, I have deep concerns, we've already talked about concern trolling, about the effect the trans rights movement is having on both. So if it's the effect that the trans rights movement is having on education, that is literally what will I tell my children. In her replies the other day, I had said some men menstruate after she said people who menstruate is the wrong term, women is the right term. And someone said, what do you mean? Genuinely asking. And someone else said, trans men. People who are assigned female at birth often menstruate. And this person said, oh, cool, thanks. That's how hard that conversation is. Like many others, I have deep concerns about the effect the trans rights movement is having on both. The third is that, as a much banned author, I'm interested in freedom of speech and have publicly defended it, even unto Donald Trump. Being someone in Donald Trump's replies, and I say this as someone who has been in Donald Trump's replies, dunking on the boy, there's a damn Cheeto in the White House, okay? Do you guys not know how serious this is? The dang Cheeto in chief. It's nothing to be proud of. Dunking on Donald Trump. Candy from a baby, okay? It doesn't... Arguing against Donald Trump on Twitter... It's not a... I'm gonna have to frame a little fucking certificate on my wall I've defended, I don't even know what, some shit to Donald Trump. The fourth is where things start to get truly personal. I'm concerned about the huge explosion in young women wishing to transition. So she means trans men there, just to be clear with everyone. And also about the increasing numbers who seem to be detransitioning, returning to their original sex because they regret the steps that have, in some cases, altered their bodies irrevocably and taken away their fertility. So now we're just telling lies. So now we're just actually lying is the thing. That just fucking sucks, my dude. That sucks the big one. Holy shit. Fucking hell. That fucking sucks. I sure hope they alter my body irrevocably. Right. Fucking exactly. I said this earlier. I'm trying to stay calm. Okay, I'm gonna quiet down. Much to the chagrin of every trans person I know, HRT is powerfully reversible. You even consider stop taking your bimbo pills, and suddenly... Okay. That's fucking... Alright. People have to keep fucking taking their antihistamines forever. Unless they take a deliberate step that is usually only available to them if they can prove they've been taking HRT for a long time and publicly living... Alright. Love that term, I'm stealing it. You got antihistamines, you got antibiotics, I've heard that one too. Of course, that's a trans femme specific one. Bimbo pills. Oh, that's just me. Okay. Right. Let's get on with it, shall we? Irrevocably, taking away the fertility. Some say they decided to transition after realizing they were same-sex attracted, and that transitioning was partly driven by homophobia, either in society or in their families. A lot of detransitioners live in circumstances where they've been forced to choose between being around people who are significant in their life and transition. And they've tried, and they've had to retreat from it because they can't handle permanently severing their relationship with their mum, their brothers, their dad. Okay? They right? And that's and framed through the TERF lens, you can say driven by homophobia because they thought they'd be more accepted if they did that. And it's no. And in a lot of cases, like the ones that TERFs will hear about and share and talk about, the detransitioners know TERFs who feed them a lot of TERF propaganda about transition and detransition. And that's a big influence on their decisions. Most people probably aren't aware. I certainly wasn't until I started researching this issue properly. Again, she as a cis woman, you as the presumed cis reader, that 10 years ago, the majority of people wanting to transition to the opposite sex were male. The ratio has now reversed. The UK has experienced a 4,400% increase in girls being referred for transitioning treatment. Again, she is talking about trans men who want to come out, not about girls. This is okay, and then real struggling to stay generous to Joanne here. Ours, autistic girls are hugely overrepresented in their numbers. Okay, this really struggling to keep my cool here, is fucking disgusting. How dare you? So firstly, the myth of transgenderism or contagious transgenderism is a very common one among all transphobes, TERFs included. And the idea is basically that it's a fun little game, it's a fun little trend among all the youths, so they'll just like have a fun, cool time and just like, just like pop some tea with the lads, just like get hairy with your boys, just run around having a cool time. But it's just a trend and they'll regret it later, and then they won't be fertile anymore. Oh god, think of the fertility, think of the eggs. Stefan Molyneux's having a panic attack. Someone fucking call his therapist. Who's his wife? Who fucking recruited her patients into his cult? Listen, please. We accept allies at Pride because an awful lot of straight or cis allies are people who, for their own reasons, are really interested in trans and queer issues and want to be involved with the community. And if we kicked out anyone who currently identified as cis, as heterosexual, firstly, I mean, we wouldn't have any cishet people defending us, and they are the majority of people, and we need those people on our side. But secondly, an awful lot of people wouldn't have the community they need to support them through coming out, because coming out is an incredibly difficult process. Incredibly difficult. I know people whose families have been incredibly supportive their entire lives, who've come out as trans when they were already out as queer in some fashion or other, and their families have been horrible. More horrible than they possibly could have imagined, based on their family being totally okay with them being queer already. Coming out is an incredibly difficult, arduous process, and it is an ongoing process through your whole life, because you're always going to need to be moving to a new area, joining a new job, sending your kid to school, and meeting new people, and inevitably in new relationships, testing the waters and figuring out if this person is someone who's going to treat you like a human being and treat you with respect, or if they're going to invalidate you and act like you have no right to basically exist. And the best way to face that is to build a support network. So this is the myth of contagious transgenderism. Okay? It's this idea that it's just a trend among people who will regret it later. But that doesn't explain the older people who are transitioning, does it? Because if it was trendy, it wouldn't really catch on with the boomers. We know they can't meme. The boomers, the Gen Xers, whatever, okay, wouldn't be transitioning late in life if it were that simple, that it's just a trend, that it's just contagious, that it's just like that you hear about being trans and you think it's cool or something. It's not that. In the last 200 years in the UK, left-handedness has shot up from, don't cite me on this exactly, below 1% to near 20% in the last 200 years. Why would that be? Is it that the genes that make someone left-handed are incredibly aggressive, and they are dominating the human race, and we will all be left-handed within 50 years? No. It's because 200 years ago, children who are learning to read and write, to write specifically, who try to do so with their left hand, were beaten in schools. until they would stop and would change to their non-dominant hand and would learn to write with their right hand because it was seen as freakish and wrong to write with their left hand. And in the last 200 years, that disgusting systemic child abuse stopped. Okay? And today, trans people are challenging the disgusting systemic child abuse of children telling their parents that they are deeply uncomfortable with the gender they've been assigned at birth, and their parents just ignoring it. In some cases, physically assaulting them. In some cases, belittling them. In some cases, taking them to conversion therapy. I have a friend whose parent tried to take him to conversion therapy. They are fighting to stop this fucking systemic abuse right now, to make a climate where people who simply as a matter of fact are this way, they just are, we're not talking about why, they just are, feel comfortable with letting people know about that. It's not contagious. Left-handedness isn't contagious. Being trans isn't contagious. Being gay isn't contagious. I mean, I don't know. You see me walking down the street, suddenly you're gay. Okay, that's arguably. But it's about a climate of acceptance. That's what it is. That's what it's about. Right. Autistic people with BPD, also borderline personality disorder, are overrepresented in the trans community. Why might that be? Might a life experience of being unable to engage with traditional systems of employment, of schooling perhaps, force you to catch the trans virus somehow? I mean, I for one was just walking down the street when barrels of toxic waste spilled on me and I lost my eyesight, but I gained heightened senses that allowed me to detect gender. No, that's not what happened. Being on the margins of society makes you reconsider your identity and recontextualize yourself in a way that will cause a lot of people to realize, not become, but realize they are trans. This here, autistic girls are hugely overrepresented in their numbers, is a statement, and in the context of her article, is fucking disgusting, because she is trying to claim that autistic people simply don't know themselves. And that can get sealed in a fucking pyramid with the rest of the cursed, antiquated bullshit. Fuck that. The same phenomenon has been seen in the US. In 2018, American physician and researcher Lisa Littman set out to explore it. In an interview, she said parents online were describing a very unusual pattern of transgender identification where multiple friends and even entire friend groups became trans-identified at the same time. I would have been remiss had I not considered social contagion and peer influences as potential factors. Littman mentioned Tumblr, Reddit, Instagram, and YouTube as contributing factors to rapid onset gender dysphoria, where she believes that in the realm of transgender identification, youth have created particularly insular echo chambers. Support networks and echo chambers are not the same thing. What J.K. Rowling and her TERF friends are in is an echo chamber, deliberately created to deny the truth and keep people from engaging properly with ideas outside of the lies they want to perpetuate. Support networks are what we're talking about here, where people reach out to other trans, other queer people online. Her paper caused a furore. Furore? Furore. She was accused of bias and of spreading misinformation about transgender people, subjected to a tsunami of abuse. Wow. And a concerted campaign to discredit both her and her work. The journal took the paper offline and re-reviewed it before republishing it. However, her career took a similar hit to that suffered by Maya Forstater. Once again, Maya Forstater was the head of a campaign of transphobic harassment and abuse. She was not fired because of tweets, her contract was not renewed, and part of that was the consideration that she was causing a hostile work environment, and it had been brought to their attention that she was a creepy, obsessed TERF. Okay. Lisa Lippman had dared challenge one of the central tenets of trans activism, which is that a person's gender identity is innate, like sexual orientation. This is not one of the central tenets of trans activism. It is one theory of gender, which exists, frankly, kind of along a spectrum to an opposing theory of gender called gender performativity. Some people believe that gender is more or less entirely things you do. Other people believe it's more or less entirely things you are. And there's a mix of opinions. I, for one, personally feel that, some people... everyone has something they kind of feel inside, and obviously everyone does a series of social cues to communicate gender to other people. Believe in a bit of both. The argument of many current trans activists is that... Oh, and by the way, when she frames it that way and makes our side the innate gender side, that is fucking horse shit. That is fucking horse shit. And I am really tired of seeing people let TERFs dictate the terms in that way. Judith Butler's gender performativity theory is perfectly fine in my books. She's said some other stuff I found a little sketchy as a person. I'm not sanctifying her as a person. I'm not canonizing her and the Curio saints, but her theory's fine, and I don't like when people when we as the trans community let the TERFs dictate the terms and let them say, you believe in this, and then we go, yeah, we believe in this. That sucks. Don't do that, please. Don't let them tell you what you believe. Okay, that's all. Nobody, the activists insisted, could ever be persuaded into being trans. Again, we're dealing with a massive misrepresentation of what's actually being said. It's that people are coming out because they feel comfortable, where, say, they would have only felt comfortable identifying as a butch lesbian before. Now they feel like it's safe to say, hey, I realized I'm a boy. Oh, shit. And other people are like, good for you, King. Nice. Okay, it's just... That's all. That's all. There's a great documentary about some trans men living and working in Tokyo called Shinjuku Boys. One of the things I learned through it was that a term that I believe may be used pejoratively, I'm not sure, onabe, is sort of used at the time this was made, which I think it was in the 90s, was being used to refer to all trans men as well as butch lesbians, because they just weren't differentiating like this. That's an example of a culture where it's not being differentiated, and as people are becoming more comfortable with the idea that there is a difference and that they can be, right, then that's when they come out. Okay. The argument of many current trans activists is that if you don't let a gender dysphoric teenager transition, they will kill themselves. In an article explaining why he resigned from the Tavistock an NHS transgender clinic in England, psychiatrist Marcus Evans stated that claims that children will kill themselves if not permitted to transition do not align substantially with any robust data or studies in this area, nor do they align with the cases I have encountered over decades as a psychotherapist. Okay. Another case where I'm just trying to stay calm. I'm just trying to stay calm here. But let's just review. It is transphobia, it is abuse, it is misgendering, it is dead naming. These are the things that there is data to, that it is commonly cited. There is data to suggest that reducing these things, okay, abuse, harassment, and deliberate denial of someone's identity, reducing these things more than halves the trans suicide rate. That's what the data suggests, and that's what's commonly cited. I don't actually have a statistic on hand because I don't think it is commonly cited how much medical transition, which is what I assume she's talking about when she says transition, will reduce people's suicide rates. I don't know. But I do know that transphobic abuse, world-famous authors with 14 million followers on Twitter coming out as TERFs, misgendering, dead-naming, shit like this, Ben Shapiro having little transphobic rants and being all over the place, shit like this is what's contributing to a climate of incredibly poor mental health among the trans community. Yeah. I mean, misgendering, renaming, and denial of identity has historically been an actual torture method, a psychological torture method used by torturers on prisoners. It's no great fucking leap to understand that when a trans kid tells you, "Hi, I'm David, I want to use he, him pronouns," and you go, "No, Jenny, you're a girl," that's awful. And that's the conversation I hear all the time, and I'm okay if I am just not keyed into a conversation that J.K. Rowling has been in, but that's the conversation I hear all the time, not one about allowing people to transition, which I assume she means medically transition, because she's fucking leagues away from self-ID at this point. All right, nor do they align with the cases I have encountered over decades as a psychotherapist. We had, when we were in the UCL Debate Society, I'm gesturing, Natalie's just over here. Oh, you're still off? There she is. We had a debate on trans issues, and specifically on children being allowed to transition. And one of the people who was there was a psychotherapist who'd been working for decades with trans children. And he said that all the fucking time, trans kids come with their parents, their parents come with them to appointments and consult with him. And all the fucking time, there's only one consultation because the parent, it's very common. The parents, kind of hold back and don't want to. But he said that parents who are unsure, including parents who are incredibly against it, who come back and who learn about the process of transition, he has never in his career had parents who got educated on what transition would actually mean, who then tried to stop their child from transitioning. It comes from a place of deep ignorance to be saying this shit, and to be trying to cite these other people, okay, who also, by the way, are always cis, okay? We'll cite a fucking doctor or whatever, but it's always a cis person. It's always a cis person, because they are the people who hold the keys to our lives, which fucking sucks. Okay. The writings of young trans men reveal a group of notably sensitive and clever people. The more of their accounts of gender dysphoria I've read, with their insightful descriptions of anxiety, dissociation, eating disorders, self-harm, and self-hatred, the more I've wondered whether, if I'd been born 30 years later, I too might have tried to transition. This is something incredibly common among bigot groups the world over, but I've seen this so much with TERFs. Romanticization of the group that you are bigoted against, and just basically kind of wishing you were them. A really common example is the prejudice against travellers, Romani travellers and Irish travellers in the UK. You will hear all the fucking time people saying they don't pay taxes and they just go where they want and they just live on the open roads, and they're describing a fantasy. They're describing a lovely time that they'd love to have that isn't the lived experience of travellers, of course. But it's clearly coming from a place of jealousy. This is really common with TERFs. I'm not going to start speculating, which I feel is having a little egg speculate. I'm not going to do that. But I have seen this all the fucking time with TERFs who say that they are working to abolish all the differences between men and women and abolish gender roles. And if they could blah 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 blah, then blah 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 blah. I'm not gonna speculate. But J.K. Rowling, that's between her and Jesus, right? I struggled with severe OCD as a teenager. If I'd found community and sympathy online that I couldn't find in my immediate environment, I believe I could have been persuaded to turn myself into the son my father had openly said he'd have preferred. What can I say? Like, what can I honestly say? What can I honestly say? Look, let's suppose for a second we're going to take a step her way and we're going to take a step my way, okay? What she wants to suppose is that it's just a fluctuating thing that you can just fully just persuade someone, just talk them into it, just debate them into being trans. So that's the step we're going to take. We're going to take this step 2. You can just fully just like own someone with facts and logic so hard that it's transition time, baby. And the step we're going to take my way is we're going to talk about gay people instead. Okay? If it is wholly possible for someone to be gay because of their environmental factors, online support community, feeling rejected by parents, toxic waste chemicals that turn them into a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, any environmental factors, that doesn't mean they shouldn't. That doesn't mean we should use any kind of therapies to convert them into a different state, assuming that that state is somehow better. And what else can I say? If we suppose she is 100% right that your identity is in this way, you just get talked into it or out of it, it doesn't mean we should stop people from transitioning. Because they are trans now. Too late, JK. We fucking got him. You lose. No, look, it doesn't mean that we should make people different twice if they supposedly have been persuaded into their identity. Just 100% supposing she's right there. It doesn't. Conversion therapy is abuse. A support network that helps someone realize who they are and helps them come out isn't abuse. Conversion therapy is. It is. And conversion therapy, when I say that, by the way, is there's kind of this idea of like pray away the gay Bible camps or something, and I'm saying there is a broad diaspora of conversion therapies, and one of the most common is that parents who feel that their relationship is ruined by their child's insistence that they're trans, that parent will insist on them going to family counseling together and preload the therapist with their concerns about their child, and the therapist will try and talk them out of it. That's the most common type. That's the type my friend experienced. That's the most common type. It's not all Bible camp. When I read about the theory of gender identity, I remember how mentally sexless I felt in youth. I remember Colette's description of herself as a mental hermaphrodite. And Simone de Beauvoir's words, "It is perfectly natural for the future woman to feel indignant at the limitations imposed upon her by her sex. The real question is not why she should reject them. The problem is rather to understand why she accepts them." That is to do with inequality. That is to do... Sorry. Okay, fine. Fine. Magnus Hirschfeld, who was arrested, had his clinic destroyed and all his research destroyed by the Nazis, said the most important woman to liberate is the woman inside of every man, and the most important man to liberate is the man inside of every woman. Kind of relates, I feel, to roughly what she's trying to describe here. As I didn't have a realistic possibility of becoming a man back in the 80s, it had to be books and music that got me through both my mental health issues and the sexualized scrutiny and judgment that sets so many girls to war against their bodies in their teens. Fortunately for me, I found my own sense of otherness and my ambivalence about being a woman reflected in the work of female writers and musicians who reassured me that, in spite of everything a sexist world tries to throw at the female-bodied, is... Where do I even begin? Let's just say this. There are terms for people who are born and assigned one gender or a different gender at birth. They are popular terms in the trans community. We have this terminology. You don't have to fucking pretend trans men are women in a sneaky way with like sneaky terminology. Oh, I won't say female. I'll just say female-bodied. No, okay. Assigned female at birth. Okay. Throw out the assigned female, people assigned female at birth. It's fine not to feel pink, frilly, and compliant inside your own head. So many of the trans women I know are fucking boot-wearing punks. God damn it. So many of the trans women I know are butch as hell, and it's not... And trans people are not trying to reinforce the gender binary. I am trans! And non-binary, Joanne, what the fuck are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? Frilly and compliant inside your own head. It's okay to feel confused, dark, both sexual and non-sexual, unsure of what or who you are. Fine, agreed. I want to be very clear here. I know transition will be a solution for some gender dysphoric people, although I'm also aware through extensive research... Okay, so let me just... I'm really sorry to be pausing so much here, but let me just... When she says some gender dysphoric people, she's trying to work around this thing I was just saying a second ago about suppose she's right and you can just argue someone into being gay, into being trans, into being ace, right? That doesn't mean you should argue them back out of it again. Supposing environmental factors or support networks or whatever make people the identity they end up being, it doesn't mean you should try to stop them. And she's trying to argue around this by saying some gender dysphoric people, as if people who are experiencing serious enough gender dysphoria to seek out transition aren't trans. That's the thing. That's the crux of this thing. Like, now I want to be clear here. I believe that, like with what she's describing a second ago, that like so many women feel a pressure to feel pink and frilly and compliant inside your own head, in her words. Plenty of cis people, in my opinion, experience gender dysphoria too, when the role imposed on them by society doesn't fit their gender identity. There are plenty of effeminate men I've known or know of or anything who are fully identify as men, and I would say they experience gender dysphoria when they're feeling pressure from all around to be more manly. And it doesn't mean that they're not men. Okay? But anyway, that's why I'm saying people who are experiencing gender dysphoria, that's not what I'd say. I'd say people who are experiencing gender dysphoria enough to seek out transition, that's when you start calling someone trans, generally speaking. Obviously, when you call an individual trans, when they start identifying themselves as trans, but in a pattern, in a group of people. That's the general distinction you could make. She's refusing to make that distinction because she's trying to argue around this idea and basically draw us to the conclusion that we should be converting kids, putting them through conversion therapy. And we shouldn't. That's bullshit. Although I'm also aware through extensive research that studies have consistently shown that between 60 to 90% of gender dysphoric teens will grow out of their dysphoria. Between 60 to 90% of gender dysphoric teens will grow out of their dysphoria? Joanne, what the fuck like, what is this? What fucking study is this? And again, it's lacking the distinction between people who experience any kind of dysphoria or dysmorphia or anything, and people who experience acute gender dysphoria enough to want to transition. And again, it's only focusing the argument on young people as if they are the only ones for whom this is happening when they're not. This fucking shit she's on right now doesn't explain how come people later in life transition. And it's because a climate of acceptance is on the rise. Someone could easily have written 30, 40 years ago that fucking studies show that between 60 to 90% of kids who insist they're left-handed will get over that fucking delusion by the time they're 20, if you beat them enough. Fucking fuck off. I'm sorry, I'm trying to stay calm with this, but like, it is about acceptance. And if people can be made trans by their environmental factors, if people can be made gay by their environmental factors, we shouldn't be trying to stop them from being that. Just like how if they're made gay or trans by their genes, we shouldn't be like systemically aborting those children. It's not a wrong thing to get rid of. I'm not a wrong thing, Joanne. We aren't wrong. Being trans isn't an ideology. Being a TERF is an ideology, and it is fucking bullshit and a wrong ideology. TERFs are a wrong thing, but they can choose to stop any fucking time. And should, because they are harming people. It is quite the reverse for trans people. Fucking stop it. I'm trying to stay calm with this. I'm trying to stay calm right now. God damn. When we got past rapid onset gender dysphoria, that's when I was in some serious trouble, okay? Rapid onset gender dysphoria as a myth that TERFs perpetuate is this idea that gender, you get like this social peer pressure from people and you suddenly start like feeling it, you know, because it's been put on you by other people. it is an observable trend with anyone coming out. If you've ever been the confidant of someone who's coming out, okay? Especially if you have multiple times. And I have. I'm visibly queer in my videos and people fucking talk to me, okay? Okay? That people say, oh, I'm questioning this thing, I'm having a think. Can you talk to me about, what do you think, blah, blah, blah. And you might say to them, well, you don't know, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Because you don't want to just be like, you can't tell them who they are. And then way faster than you were expecting, they're just like out there living their best life. And this has happened to me with multiple friends. And it's because it's like realizing how wrong things were. It's about realizing how much work needs to get done. It's about turning yourself around and suddenly realizing that fucking big monster that's been following you everywhere all along. It is not a sudden onset of gender dysphoria given to you by your transgender pals. It is taking a sharp inventory as you take a little step. You try getting your friends to use an androgynous nickname and wearing, shirts and jeans instead of skirts. And you realize, oh shit, this was it. This was the one. Holy shit, this was the one. I want he, him pronouns now. You try wearing makeup. Stuff like this. And you realize, oh shit, this is the one. This is what I want. And you have to go because because when it's true, it's incredibly true and you really need it. And that's just a fact of like how gender do. It's just a fact of how people feel about their gender, and it's exacerbated by the strict gender roles and strict gender binary that society tries to put on us.
It's purely a symptom of these changes wouldn't happen so suddenly.
If you could just determine, right, exactly. If you could just determine from birth everything you wanted about your identity and just casually guide yourself into your preferred, niche, you'd have a fucking great time. And you'd never have rapid onset gender dysphoria. It would never happen. Right, let's carry on, because we're like halfway down. Oh, let's have some more water. God, my mouth's really dry. Okay. I need to shout out They Goblin on Twitter. They Goblin is a fantastic Antifa super soldier and trans rights agenda activist. Whatever. They're just a good account to follow, and they keep a close eye on TERF shit, but also on like what's going on with legislation, what's in the news. Like they're just a good account to follow, and if you want to stay abreast of stuff. Haha, abreast. Oh, hang on. There we are. Again and again, I've been told to just meet some trans people. I have. In addition to a few younger people who are all adorable. Fuck off. I happen to know a self-described transsexual woman. Are we really gonna start talking about the transsexuals? Who's older than I am and wonderful. Although she's open about her past as a gay man, I've always found it hard to think of her as anything other than a woman. And I believe, and certainly hope, she's completely happy to have transitioned. Being older though, she went through a long and rigorous process of evaluation, psychotherapy, and stage transformation. Just like kids have to. Just like everyone. It's not that kids are just transitioning. It's not a thing. It's not a fucking thing. I don't know if somebody believes this. If somebody believes this article, I don't know how to say, while staying generous and keeping the tone light, that this is a fucking lie. Like, when you're just lying, what am I supposed to honestly do? Like, that's a lie. That's a lie, Queen. What's you doing? What's that about? Cut it out. The current explosion of trans activism is urging a removal of almost all the robust systems through which candidates for sex reassignment were once required to pass. Again, I am trying to stay calm, but right now, in England and Wales, the Tories are making it infinitely harder for trans people. So much harder. Seriously, so fucking much harder. Seriously, so fucking much harder. Right now. This is hateful bullshit. Okay. But she is Scottish, and invested in what's going on in Scotland, and a few days ago, Scotland passed a bill that essentially approved self-ID, because it provided a very vague definition for what gender was, and then said you're not allowed to question someone if they say they are. So that's self-ID basically. And this was a day, 2 days before her big TERF meltdown, which, if you've been watching long enough to remember, I know I've been going a little while now, but she said that she was only back on Twitter so that she could kiss babies and dance around in fields of flowers and help dogs that were sad. And that it just accidentally happened that she had a TERF meltdown. That's not fucking true. The day before, 2 days before, Scotland passed a bill that essentially approved self-ID for trans people, and then mysteriously she shows up on Twitter. It's not... It's... Right. A man who intends to have no surgery and take no hormones may now secure himself a gender recognition certificate and be a woman in the sight of the law. Many people aren't aware of this. Okay. I need to go back to this shit about the predator stuff, okay? And I don't mean to be, like, making light of a very grim topic, but the problem is that it is absurd, and then when I talk about it, it comes out absurd and satirical and sarcastic, sardonic, because it's ridiculous to begin with. And I don't mean to be joking about predation or abuse or whatever. Does anyone think that a man who is a man who identifies as a man is going and getting a gender recognition certificate so he can go do lots of sexual assaulting? Or do we all know that a predator would just go do the things? And if that predator happens to also be trans, they simply also happen to be trans. Look, by the numbers, historically, 100% of Adolf Hitlers were cis. Okay? And I am not trying to prove a correlation between being cis and being Adolf Hitler. But historically speaking, every Adolf Hitler has been cis. And I think that kind of... I don't know, I just have some concerns. When you're raising your children as cis that they might be Adolf Hitler. I don't know. I just think suddenly anyone could just sort of like identify as Adolf Hitler all of a sudden if you just let people self-ID. It's fucking nonsense. It's just fucking gibberish. I'm sorry. It's just fucking gibberish. It's just fucking gibberish. People are getting a gender recognition certificate. Also, they're not bringing the gender recognition certificate to the bathroom. This is the other thing, like I was saying, okay? You don't have a bouncer on bathrooms. And as far as you do, it's just cis people who get angry at you if you try and make your best guess as to how people will read your gender presentation today. Okay? If you're not passing to a fucking standard that these fucking people are happy with, and you just need to piss, that's the bouncer, okay? But there isn't an employed bouncer standing outside the bathroom who won't let you in if you have no certificate and will let you in if you have a certificate. That's the thing. So no one's getting the gender recognition certificate so that then, if they go and assault someone, no one will be able to legally challenge them because they will have done nothing legally wrong. Because when women sexually assault women in bathrooms, that's legal. It's not. It's fucking not. The fuck are you talking about? The fuck are you talking about? People are getting gender recognition certificates so they can get their passport updated, so they can change their name on PayPal, you absolute fucking wriggling fool, so they can fucking change their bank details, so they can get married with their fucking certificate, marriage certificate saying the correct gender and not the wrong one. They're not getting the certificate so they can pee in the right bathroom. You just go in the bathroom that you think you have the best fucking shot in, and honestly, most of the trans people I know have gone through the phase, or are going through it, where they're really fucking worried about being able to go into the right bathroom, and not so they can get away with fucking crimes in there, but so that they can pee. Just let us pee, Joanne. Just let us fucking pee. Just let us pee. I'm begging you. Just let us pee. Please. Please. Cis women do not show a gender certificate to enter cis women's spaces. And if they did show that certificate, they would still be perfectly capable of assaulting or abusing anyone in there. We're living through the most misogynistic period I've experienced.
What?
Wow, that sentence really set me back. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow. Did you put something in my water?
My grandfather calls women split arses. Shut the fuck up!
Did you put something in my water? Am I reading those words correctly? Am I
Split arses!
I was born. And then I worked for Amnesty International, and I was a teacher. And I'm a white cis woman. And then I got incredibly rich. And then I said some really transphobic things. And now I'm experiencing abuse. Come on. Come on. Come the fuck on. Okay. Alright. Back in the 80s, I imagined that my future daughters, should I have any, would have it far better than I ever did. But between the backlash against feminism and a porn-saturated online culture, I am trying, I swear to God, I am trying so hard to keep Joanne in the generous group where she's the people who have been lied to and tricked by TERFs, by dedicated, creepy, obsessed bigots. And not the group who are dedicated, creepy, obsessed bigots. But then she links being trans to porn. I believe things have gotten significantly worse for girls. Never have I seen women denigrated and dehumanized to the extent they are now. From the leader of the free world, Angela Merkel. Oh, I know who she means, right? Long history of sexual assault accusations and his proud boast of grabbing them by the pussy, to the incel movement that rages against women who won't give them sex, to the trans activists who declare that TERFs need punching and re-educating. Men across the political spectrum seem to agree women are asking for trouble. Everywhere women are being told to shut up and sit down or else. Joanne, you are richer than the Queen. What the fuck are you talking about? You are telling trans women, trans people in general, let's be clear about this. Let's not leave my kings out of this, okay? Because that's a crucial thing, okay? Because people have been ignoring that when she said people who menstruate is the wrong term and it's women. That's deeply insulting to my precious fucking boys, okay? You, Joanne, millionaire J.K. Rowling, you are telling trans people to shut up and sit down or else. Because you have a vast fucking fortune. And now you're falling in with this obsessed fucking cult. For those who don't know, when I keep referring to the gender critical movement as a cult, look up Pink News TERF's cult, because someone who has transitioned out of being in the TERF movement says that they are a deeply abusive, isolating mass movement of people who are deliberately cutting people off from questioning views and cutting them off from their support networks and tossing around very suspect amounts of fucking resources that come from where the fuck in order to perpetuate their bigotry. And this is where I'm, again, trying to be more generous. TERFs who are dedicated and are horrible fascists follow my fucking friend down the street, harass two of my other friends, okay? To the point of having to like lock their accounts and hide. And then there's people who are just being duped. Okay? Here's J.K. Rowling insisting that it's a hard time for women because of trans people, instead of understanding that trans issues are part of feminism, and if your feminism doesn't include trans people, it's garbage feminism. That's the thing. Does she think Trump and the incels and the TRAs are on the same side against her? Come on. Like, come the fuck on. TERF organizations are actually trackably funded by far-right groups in America. The same ones who favor Donald Trump. At least following the money, incels, Donald Trump, and fucking TERFs are the united front. The axis of dipshittery, okay? They're the ones on a similar side, okay? Trans people and feminists are not enemies. I've read all the arguments about femaleness not residing in the sexed body. Man, I'd love to have a sexed body. And the assertions that biological women don't have common experiences. And I find them too deeply misogynistic and regressive. So, I don't think people are arguing that trans women have, in every case, identical experiences to cis women. And I don't think that people are arguing that trans men have never had any experiences the same as cis women. This is a really, really weird overstatement. There are people who've come out really, really late in life, Caitlyn Jenner, for example, who's also rich and had a career as an athlete, yeah, who certainly will have had plenty of experiences in common with cis men, whether she internally experienced them the same or not. Whether maybe she felt dysphoric through all of them, but she will have had them, and no one's arguing that she didn't. And someone, Kim Petras, who transitioned very young in childhood, will have had a ton of experiences as a passing trans woman that simply are the same experiences as cis women have had, but it's different people have different lives. This is just such a weird exaggeration to the point of lying. Yeah. Just yeah. Oh god, this is embarrassing at this point.
I've had TERFs argue with me that argue against trans people, saying that trans women will.
Do you want to come say it here, because it's on setting 1?
Okay. I've had white middle-class professional TERFs argue with me that trans women aren't real because they'll never experience things like female genital mutilation.
It's true, I am a ghost.
Because they'll never experience things like female genital mutilation or other things that middle-class white cis women also will never experience, because guess fucking what? The female experience is not universal, and it's not the same. And white women shit on trans women, and they shit on black women, and they shit on disabled women, and they shit on working class women.
Yeah. The saying we come back to is cut a TERF and a racist bleeds. And it's just that over and over again. Like, in trying to defend why trans women aren't women, these people say all sorts of just heinous goddamn shit, as if that wasn't heinous enough. Could you get me some water? Thank you so much. Okay. We're coming fairly close to the end of the article. I just want to remind everyone again, I have my Twitter is locked right now because of J.K. Rowling's TERF simps mass reporting me, and so I can't promote my video coming out on Friday, 9 p.m. BST, on my channel, which is about being trans and non-binary, and I'd like to, but I've been silenced by bigots, so that's cool. So on my channel, 9 p.m. BST on Friday, please share that link around. I'd really appreciate people being there. Alright, let's go. And we're near at the end now, and after that, I'm going to just play some GTA, and we're just going to hang here, and anyone who wants to contribute in the chat, we'll just back and forth. Okay. Right. It's also clear that one of the objectives of denying the importance of sex, which is not, it's actually just, we're trying to get the importance of sex in perspective, right? There's that great comic, who's the Oh No guy? All the comics, all his comics end with someone saying, "Oh no," and it's this person saying to a man and a woman, "You have to cover up your genitals." And then the next panel, they're wearing clothes, and he's like, "But you have to wear clothes corresponding to your genitals, so that everyone knows what kind of genitals you have." And in the last panel, he's saying, "When people see your clothes, they have to really be thinking about your genitals." And the man and the woman both say, "Oh no." This shit. We're trying to get how much how trying to get good perspective on how important biological sex is. Because actually, what kind of fucking what alien goddamn meat tricks you got in your pants is no one's business, but you and your doctor and your fucking intimate partners, should you choose to have them. Okay. Denying the importance of sex, so that's my response to that, is to erode what some seem to see as the cruelly segregationist idea of women having their own biological realities. Biological realities is a common TERF dog whistle. Or, just as threatening, unifying realities that make them a cohesive political class. So she's basically saying that the trans movement is going to stop women being able to organize around being women, where actually anyone with anything going on, anything, if the lights are on, okay, anybody can fucking understand that trans women's struggles and how they relate to cis women, and trans men's struggles and how they relate to both cis women and cis men, how trans women's experiences relate to cis men, how everyone's experiences relate to everyone else, how all trans people's experiences relate to gender, actually help the political organization of feminism. Damn, if only we had a whole sample of people who had experienced life being treated like men, and then at some point had flipped a switch and started experiencing life as women. Then we'd be able to have a control group for what the experience is like of being a woman compared to being a man. Wouldn't that be handy? I'm being reductionist here. But holy shit, how incredibly clearly does that help the feminist case? Feminists and trans people are not enemies. My trans brothers, my handsome kings, I see you all, and you are, despite what J.K. Rowling might think, not confused lesbians. Fuck that shit. Unless you identify with the label of lesbian, and you're a he-him lesbian, or a they-them lesbian, and that's totally fine, and good for you. Let's carry on. The hundreds of emails I've received in the last few days prove this erosion concerns many others just as much. This is the love bombing we talked about before. It isn't enough for women to be trans allies. Women must accept and admit there is no material difference between trans women and themselves. No one is asking for this. We don't want trans colorblindness, just the same as anti-racists don't want people to pretend there is just no difference between black people and white people. They want people to address the history of colonialism and racism and systemic bigotry in our societies. So do we. We want the issues that trans people to experience to be faced as a difference that trans people experience as opposed to cis people. We do want to focus on this thing. Just look at fucking Dave Rubin, okay? One Dave Rubin talk, one fucking episode of the Rubin Report will certainly feature my very powerful, very smart son saying the words, really the left are the real racists because they think that race is the most important thing in the world and all they want to do is focus on race. That's the way that progressivism works. It is milquetoast, colorblind liberalism that pretends there's no difference between people, and that's fucking bullshit, and that's not what we want. That's not what we want. That's not what we want. It's not what I want. It's not what we want. Oh boy. But, as many women have said before me, woman is not a costume. Cool. Woman is not an idea in a man's head. Fine. Woman is not a pink brain. Fine. A liking for Jimmy Choos, don't know what that is, or any of the other sexist ideas now somehow touted as progressive. Wow, I don't tout any of those things, and I am literally the queen of the SJWs. They all report to me. I'm the CEO of Antifa. I'm the head of the cucked SJWs online. And I don't think any of that shit. Not a fucking jot of it. No, I'm just kidding. I think that when I put on lipstick, I become a woman. Literally become a woman. Of course, that's what I think, Joanne. Moreover, the inclusive language that calls female people menstruators. No, it doesn't. It doesn't call female people menstruators. That's the thing. That's what you're fucking missing there, isn't it? It doesn't call female people menstruators. It calls people who menstruate, or menstruators, or people with vulvas. And yeah, it strikes many women as dehumanizing and demeaning. It is not our fault cis people are bad at including us. We didn't all get the fucking memo and weren't at the meeting of the WHO that decided what terminology was going to be used. But it is better to be calling women and trans men who menstruate people who menstruate rather than calling trans men women. That's better. It would be even better if there was a general consensus on what a nice sounding term was. A good, solid term that people liked. I mean, if you're not talking about people who menstruate, and you're talking about people who are assigned female at birth, might I suggest a fab terminology you can use? But if you're literally only talking about menstruation, which she was in the article that she was sharing, then yeah, people who menstruate is kind of fine and kind of the best you're going to do for now. I don't call the human race as a whole people without peanut allergies. Because some people have peanut allergies, and it would just be weird for me to just not include them. And when I'm talking about people with peanut allergies, I talk about people with peanut allergies, not South Asian. I don't say South Asian people with peanut allergies, because then I'd be excluding everyone who's not South Asian who has a... It's just descriptive. It's just descriptive of the fucking group that you're talking about. You have to be kidding me.
Children also menstruate.
Right. Right. And a feminist would not, and I know this because I'm a fucking feminist, would not want to be calling a girl a woman just based on the grounds that she menstruates, because that's upsetting as hell and leads to a lot of goddamn misogyny. But suddenly, in the process of trying to prove that trans women aren't women and trans men aren't men, TERFs are saying that girls are women just because they menstruate. The word for people who menstruate is women. Suddenly, right? Carter TERF and a misogynist bleeds. It's this thing every fucking time. Along the way, to prove this bullshit, they just stumble into all sorts of other bigotry. It's a nightmare. Okay. I understand why trans activists consider this language to be appropriate and kind, but for those of us who've had degrading slurs spat at us by violent men... Cool, so the group you're describing is a hell of a lot of people, and it's not just cis women. It's not neutral, it's hostile and alienating. Can we get a hell yeah from my menstruators in chat, please? Thank you. Which brings me to the fifth reason I'm deeply concerned about the consequences of the current trans activism. God damn. Look, motherfucker. Okay, sorry. Okay. It is just descriptive. Trans activism isn't destroying the idea of woman or destroying sex or... Okay?
It's literally just being specific.
It is just describing group. That's what I mean about my peanut allergy thing. It's just, if I just said people with peanut allergies, that wouldn't be a wrong thing in the context of talking about people with peanut allergies. And if I was describing the whole human race, it would be a wrong term. Because it's just descriptive. Which brings me to my fifth reason I'm deeply concerned about the consequences of current trans activism. I've been in the public eye now for over 20 years, and have never talked publicly about being a domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor. This isn't because I'm ashamed those things happened to me, but because they're traumatic to revisit and remember. I also feel protective of my daughter from my first marriage. I didn't want to claim sole ownership of a story that belongs to her too. However, a short while ago, I asked her how she'd feel if I were publicly honest about that part of my life, and she encouraged me to go ahead. I'm mentioning these things now, not in an attempt to garner sympathy, but out of solidarity with the huge number of women who have histories like mine, who've been slurred as bigots for having concerns about single-sex spaces. I managed to escape my first violent marriage with some difficulty, but I'm now married to a truly good and principled man, safe and secure in ways I never in a million years expected to be. However, the scars left by violence and sexual assault don't disappear, no matter how loved you are and no matter how much money you've made. My perennial jumpiness is a family joke. Even I know it's funny, but I pray my daughters never have the same reasons I do for hating sudden loud noises or finding people behind me when I haven't heard them approaching. If you could come inside of my head and understand what I feel when I read about a trans woman dying at the hands of a violent man, you'd find solidarity and kinship. I have a visceral sense of the terror in which those trans women will have spent their last seconds on Earth, because I too have known moments of blind fear when I realized that the only thing keeping me alive was the shaky self-restraint of my attacker. I believe the majority of trans-identified people not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable for all the reasons I've outlined. Trans people need and deserve protection. Like women, okay, they're most likely to be killed by sexual partners. Trans women who work in the sex industry, particularly trans women of color, are at particular risk. Like every other domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor I know, I feel nothing but empathy and solidarity with trans women who've been abused by men. Okay, look. I have some experience talking with people who have had bad experiences and bring them up in the same manifesto of why they think something that's bad and wrong. And this, okay, I read this all before I decided to stream, and this is what I've been saying the whole way through, that I want to keep her in this group, not of the obsessed, creepy, fucking fascist bigots that are organized professional TERFs who spend all their time harassing people, but on the side of people who legitimately think they're trying to help and have just been co-opted by bigots. This, okay, you just have people who prey on you, okay? And it's a different kind of abuse. The TERFs who turn to lesbians and say trans women are erasing us, okay, are preying on those lesbians' experiences of homophobia, of sometimes violent, sometimes verbal, emotional, a lifetime of some kinds of abuse, and they're preying on that and preying on the instinct that abuse survivors have to recognize things as potential abuse. When she talks about feeling about perennial jumpiness, okay, abuse survivors recognize this, and it is a thing. Like, it is an overwillingness to mistrust and to believe, especially if there's a little voice in your ear, that someone there is trying to destroy you in some way. I have had this instinct myself. The phrase that Natalie and I use really commonly, okay, there's barely a week that goes by where we don't say this at some point, is an inversion on the idiom, okay? When you're a nail, everything looks like a hammer. It's like, you know that you're someone who's capable of being abused when you've been abused. And you then are so ready to see it. And that is what TERFs, as an organized front, are preying on and manipulating. And that is why this whole way through I've been trying to keep her in this other category, okay, of people who are being manipulated and lied to by these fucking creeps. Because there are people who are fucking cis men, even. Again, I'm not naming any particular names, but I know they come to mind, who spend all their fucking time harassing trans people and even being, frankly, openly homophobic and misogynistic in their crusade against trans women. And it couldn't be plainer to see that they are the ones doing the harm here. And by taking a magnifying glass over sometimes the illusion and sometimes just the tiny, tiny fringe case of trans people causing a problem or being a predator or something, and showing it to people who've experienced some kind of abuse, be it the kind that J.K. Rowling is writing about here, or be it a lifetime of homophobia and being othered, and that's why TERFs prey on lesbians so much. They make people think that trans people represent a return of the abuse they faced before. That is why I want to make the distinction. Because there are people over here in this group who I don't know haven't experienced some kind of abuse themselves, but really don't seem to be acting out of a fear that trans people will hurt them or people they care about in some way. But instead are just hateful creeps. And people like that have harassed people I know, friends of mine, and made their lives hell. And those people are the problem here. And then they are manipulating people like J.K. Rowling. Okay. So I want trans women to be safe. At the same time, I do not want to make natal girls and women. This is all just fucking garbage bullshit that's been put in her head. I said this already, okay? There is a fab term for people who were assigned female at birth. Can I get a hell yeah from my menstruators in chat?
What about, there's also the defab.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say a dab, but I got it completely mixed up. Please.
Oh, you thought it was a dab,
Yeah.
and then I could do a dab.
Yeah.
When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, and as I've said, gender confirmation certificates may now be granted without any need for surgery or hormones, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. That is the simple truth. A gender recognition certificate will not make a cis man who in no way identifies as any other gender more capable of entering a women's bathroom in the fucking back of Applebee's, okay? That's not real. No one checks your fucking woman card. On Saturday morning, I read that the Scottish Government is proceeding... Here we go. Is proceeding with its controversial gender recognition plans, which will in effect mean that all a man needs to become a woman is to say he's one. To use a very contemporary word, I was triggered, ground down by the relentless attacks from trans activists on social media. When I was only when I was only there to give children feedback about pictures they'd drawn for my book under lockdown. I spent much of Saturday in a very dark place inside my head as memories of a serious sexual assault I suffered in my 20s recurred on a loop. That assault happened at a time in a space where I was vulnerable, and a man capitalized on an opportunity. I couldn't shut out those memories, and I was finding it hard to contain my anger and disappointment about the way I believe my government is playing fast and loose with women's and girls' safety. Understand what I am saying here about how people who are the abusive and harmful ones have manipulated her into making this instantaneous connection. Because I, and everyone I know, sees Scotland passes Self-ID, Gender Recognition Act, and they think, fantastic, good fucking news, great job Scotland, good on you lads. And her head goes here. And that is a really fucking sad thing. That's not okay. And it's not her fault that it does. Because she's been concern-trolled into this place by these people. Right. Late on Saturday evening, scrolling through children's pictures before I went to bed, I forgot the first rule of Twitter. Never ever expect a nuanced conversation. Well, at last we're on the same page. And reacted to what I felt was a degrading language about women. I spoke up about the importance of sex and have been paying the price ever since. I was transphobic, I was a cunt, a bitch, a TERF. I deserved cancelling, punching, and death. You are Voldemort, said one person, clearly feeling this was the only language I'd understand. I would say, hoping it was the only language she would understand. Because nothing else seems to fucking... because they're just hoping we can please get through to her. That's it. It would be so much easier to tweet the approved hashtags because, of course, trans rights are human rights, and of course, trans lives matter. See, this is... okay, this is really fucked. Because this is... I'm just trying to be so generous here, but she keeps being incredibly heinous with this.
Of course, Black Lives Matter.
Of course, trans lives matter. Scoop up the woke cookies and bask in a virtue-signaling afterglow. Come on. Just come on. Just come on. There's joy, relief, and safety in conformity. As Simone de Beauvoir also wrote, without a doubt it is more comfortable to endure blind bondage than to work for one's liberation. The dead too are better suited to the earth than the living. Huge numbers of women are justifiably terrified by the trans activists, but that's it as well. It's not huge numbers of women. It's the majority of okay. When surveyed in the UK, more people said a woman with a penis is a woman than said that she's not a woman. There was a large amount of a don't know section, but the largest of the three groups was people who said, yes, a woman with a penis is a woman.
Considering the poor state of education about trans people in this country.
So saying huge numbers of women, I don't know. That's another abusive tactic by the TERF community. Pretending we're just the ones who are speaking up and everyone's on our side.
Silent majority.
Right, exactly.
Literally it, silent.
Exactly. If for those who don't remember, who aren't really like politically activated yet in 2016, the alt-right continually claimed to be the silent majority. They were just representing the voices of the 90% of people who secretly support Donald Trump. And hey, how did that work out? He lost the popular vote. He's been the historically most unpopular president in US history. Okay, right. It's an abusive lie. And I'm not, and to be clear, that's again, really trying to be generous. Every time that I say this thing's a TERF talking point, this thing's a dog whistle, this thing's this tactic, and this thing's abusive, I don't just mean to call her those things and call her abusive. I'm saying I'm thinking about how these things got in her head. Right. So many have got in touch with me to tell their stories. They're afraid of doxing, of losing their jobs, of their livelihoods, and of violence. I have people contact me all the time. I don't extrapolate this to say everyone is trans, even though we all know that's true. But endlessly unpleasant as its constant targeting of me has been, I refuse to bow down to a movement that I believe is doing demonstrable harm in seeking to erode woman as a political and biological class and offering cover to predators like few before it. Again, it's just such a tiny marginal fringe case when it happens at all. And the reality, the actual thing actually fucking happening is trans people getting attacked. And the magnifying glass over this fringe case is only an abusive lie to get people to spend their time arguing about it, J.K. Rowling included. I stand alongside the brave women and men, gay, straight, and trans, who are standing up for freedom of speech and thought and for the rights and safety of some of the most vulnerable in our society. Young gay kids, fragile teenagers, and women who are reliant on and wish to retain their single-sex spaces. Polls show those women are in the vast majority and exclude only those privileged or lucky enough never to have come up against male violence or sexual assault, and who have never troubled to educate themselves on how prevalent it is. Look, I can spend all my fucking day saying, look, Joanne, you're a fucking millionaire. You can spend all your fucking day claiming it's actually just the privileged people who don't know the facts and have never experienced it. And yeah, you've got a lived experience of horrible, horrible abuse, very clearly. And you have informed yourself on stuff. But moreover, you've been manipulated into being a puppet for some bad fucking people who fucking suck. Alright, we're on the last 3 paragraphs now. The one thing that gives me hope is that the women who can protest and organize are doing so. And they have some truly decent men and trans people alongside them. Okay, let's name some fucking names. Graham Linehan is a goddamn piece of shit. Okay? And although I haven't seen her be like publicly friendly or allied with him, I have this sinking feeling when she says truly decent men and trans people alongside them, when she talks about truly decent men, that she's talking about that goddamn piece of shit.
Does anyone here know if she follows him? Because if she follows him, that's, you know, you can't see what he's doing every day and think that that's normal, okay?
He is an obsessed creep, okay? I tried to make it to the end of this without, okay? But he has harassed 2 people I know in real fucking life. Trans people I know who are on Twitter at all have, like, said about feeling like it's a fucking inevitability sooner or later. You know, they'll say, actually, trans women are women and trans men are men and non-binary people are valid, or they'll say trans rights, or they'll say fucking TERFs rot, but just on their own timeline. And these creeps who are just searching constantly will pick them up, and next Graham Linehan will post their profile picture, and there'll just be hundreds of creeps just like saying how they don't look like a woman and blah blah blah, and I bet they're a pedophile and all this fucking shit, and just like messaging them and trying to dox them and sending them threats. Graham Linehan is not an edge case. He is a very representative TERF. He is the TERF extraordinaire. He spends all his time harassing people. He has displayed every bigotry under the sun in his crusade to try and prove that trans women aren't women. and he has driven his entire family away from him with his creepy obsession. He is the face of TERFs, and that's what needs to be understood about this. That distinction, he's the one over here, J.K. Rowling is the one over here, and that's it. That's just it. Political parties seeking to appease the loudest voices in this debate are ignoring women's concerns at their peril. In the UK, women are reaching out to each other across party lines, concerned about the erosion of their hard-won rights and widespread intimidation. None of the gender-critical women I've talked to hates trans people. On the contrary, many of them became interested in this issue in the first place out of concern for trans youth, and they're hugely sympathetic towards trans adults who simply want to live their lives, but who are facing a backlash for a brand of activism they don't endorse.
Right, so they don't have sympathy for the trans women who just want to, old people who just want to live their lives, who aren't criticizing.
Look, it's the old thing, right? We used to be racist, but now it's gone too far the other way. Now we're too not racist. Anytime you find yourself, I will die on this hill, okay? Furry rights, okay? Anytime you find yourself being like this group who claim to be pushing for progressivism and equal rights, it's a lie and a trick. Because movements don't get mass appeal when they're just like a cloaked fucking bunch of abusive creeps. Hence why TERFs are just a tiny fringe group of loud weirdos. Okay? Trans people pushing for more equality, for more rights, aren't pushing for too much trans rights. There's no too much trans rights. Trans power, trans supremacy, death to the cis. There you go. Let's fucking violate Twitch terms of service too. Fuck it. Look, there isn't a too far or whatever, right? The supreme irony is that the attempt to silence women with the word TERF, I wish it fucking worked, may have pushed more young women towards radical feminism than the movement seen in decades. Okay, the movement of radical feminism, is the book called like Kill All Men? The book Henry and Lily were talking about. The movement that self-identifies as radical feminism is not one that's been pushing towards women's liberation and equality and fixing the gendered problems in society. It is like one that's always held up people who have some seriously concerning views.
I mean, radical feminism is not all TERFs, and I don't know that.
No. Firstly, she's trying to claim that TERF is just a word that's being used about radical feminists, and then that radical feminist is a good thing. People who self-identify as radical feminists have historically not really been the most savory characters, actually. Most people just identify as feminists, and that's fucking controversial enough. Tons of fucking people get furious when you identify yourself as a feminist.
Yep, she does feel like that.
Cool. Yeah, death to the cis in Minecraft. Parody. In a dream, hypothetically. This wasn't me. My brother was on the mic. I was asleep. I had a blindfold on. I didn't know what was going on. The last thing I want to say is this. I haven't written this essay in the hope that anybody will get out a violin for me, not even a teeny weeny one. I'm extraordinarily fortunate. I mean, there I am duped, because I've tried to do that, but whatever. I'm extraordinarily fortunate. I'm a survivor, certainly not a victim. I've only mentioned my past because, like every other human being on this planet, I have a complex backstory which shapes my fears, my interests, and my opinions. I never forget that inner complexity when I'm creating a fictional character, and I certainly never forget it when it comes to trans people. All I'm asking, all I want, is for similar, empathy, similar understanding to be extended to the many millions of women whose sole crime is wanting their concerns to be heard without receiving threats and abuse. Come on. Come on. Come on. Like, come on. Okay, for one thing, trans people...
About immigration too, and they just want to have their concerns about immigration heard without being called bigots. And
right, exactly. Like,
and...
it's a common thing among far-right... Again, I'm not calling Joe Rowling far-right here. I'm talking about the comparative... abusive methods that fascists use to get well-intentioned people on their side. A common talking point that immigrants will be given too many rights and people will be afraid of calling out how many immigrants are raping people because they'll be for fear of being called racist. It's so common to the far right. It is in the Turner Diaries, the neo-Nazi Bible. Thought Slime has an excellent video on that if you want to watch it. Huge content warning for all sorts of horrible shit. It is the go-to text for neo-Nazi terrorists who want to solidify their worldview. It is to being a neo-Nazi terrorist as Atlas Shrugged is to right-wing libertarianism. In that fucking book, they've literally passed laws protecting people's basically legalizing that fear of being called racist because it's only the brown guys who are doing any of the rapes. So you shouldn't be questioning it. Just let it be happening. And it's the same concern trolling here, where we're just talking about what if this hypothetical person used trans rights to abuse women. Fuck it. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are people not calling Jessica Yaniv a predator because she's trans? Is that happening? I'm not fucking seeing that happening. I'm seeing everyone calling her a predator because she is one. Are you serious? Because I'm seeing people being silenced for being trans and being having their voices promoted for being anti-trans. I'm seeing people be protected when they're furthering TERF and transphobic talking points, right? And I'm seeing people getting shut down for trying to question that. Especially when questioning it is framed as misogynistic by TERFs. So what do you want? Look, I hope I've made my point here. I've been kind of ignoring chat a little bit. I'm sorry about that. I love you, kings and queens and queens. You're all the best. I'm just gonna do some GTA for maybe like the next hour, and just chill here. And Natalie and I will chat with chat. I've been also neglecting my dinner, so I'm gonna have some dinner, and we'll just chat here. This bit, reading the article, I'm gonna put that up. I'm gonna clip that and put that somewhere. But yeah, that's been it basically. If you aren't interested in hanging out now's your time to escape. But basically, like I said before, my Twitter is locked for trying to argue with TERFs. Mira just posted, thank you Mira, the link to my premiere on Friday, 9 p.m. BST. It's a video about being trans and non-binary, and apparently it's beautiful and will make you cry. I'm being informed right now by my correspondent in the field. I can't tweet about it, so please share it around. I think it's a great vid. Should we play some GTA and chill out?
Do you want to have a break and have some food first?
I'm going to put the waiting screen up just to change things around, but that will only be a couple of minutes. All right. I'll put the waiting screen up. You guys can pretend that when the waiting screen's up, I'm not looking at the screen, even though we all know that's not true. And you can use that as your chance to sneak away before I do the GTA section. Okay, love you all. I'll see you in a couple of minutes.